I've been trying for 40 years to get Republicans in Fox News and elsewhere to pay attention to this threat of endocrine disruptors. And they ridiculed me, derided me, and just ignored me. Tucker Carlson did an extraordinary documentary a year and a half ago on endocrine disruptors and basically said all the things I just said. And he was absolutely attacked by the left and by the mainstream environmental community. So and then, the other big issue with the mainstream environmental is this fixation on carbon alone, and all the things that brought us into the environment. People become environmentalists not because they're scared of a line on a graph, and you're going to be dead after at this point in history if you don't behave. We got involved because of love. Because of love of the habitat, because of love of the environment, because of love of our Purple Mountains majesties, our rivers and streams and understanding. We're not protecting nature for the sake of the fishes and the birds. We're protecting it our own sake because nature enriches us. And this has been forgotten by the environmental movement, and they've simply become fixated on carbon alone, and that is the only issue. And, I'm watching the outcome of that now. On the coast of the Atlantic coast of North America, we have 21 offshore wind farms being built. It's privatized 5,000 square miles of land between the Gulf of Maine and North Carolina. And they're pounding into the sediment 2,200 of turbines. The turbines are unspeakably large. Just the blades on those turbines are 1,000 feet long. They're bigger than the Eiffel Tower. They're all made in China. And when they explode, which one did off of Nantucket a month ago, they put shards into the water so you can't swim without getting cut. You can't go to the beaches in Nantucket because of the shards on them. But they're killing the whale. The nymphs of National Marine Fisheries have warned that the turbines are going to cause the collapse of the cod fishery because they're in the spawning grounds. No, the environmental movement doesn't care. They built these, and they are destroying the whale populations, and everybody knows it. In 2 years, we've had, on average, there was about 4 groundings a year. We've had 109 whale deaths, unexplained. Over the past 2 years alone, since 2016, we've been averaging 16 to 20 a year, and these are right whales. Right whales, there's only 368 left in the world, only 70 fertile females, minke whales, humpback whales, and other large whale species, and they're being exterminated. And everybody's pretending it's not the wind farms, but there's no other explanation. There's been no other changes. And the federal environmental agencies that regulate this also regulate oil production in the Gulf of Mexico. The rule is that if there's a single whale death within 50 miles of an operation, everything comes to a halt till it's explained. They've waived that rule, and they've refused to investigate the deaths. They refuse to do proper necropsies of the dead whales to keep us in the dark about what's actually causing this, but everybody knows what's causing it. And the big environmental groups, the inside the Beltway groups, including my group that I loved, which is NRDC, but Sierra Club and Greenpeace, they're all pretending it's not happening. You have the small environmental groups on the coastline, the 17, these little environmental groups that are going crazy, protesting and demanding investigations, but they have been excluded now from the process. And then you're seeing the same, all of these wind farms are all being built by foreign companies, right? Nobody would build a wind farm, an offshore wind. I'm very much in favor of onshore wind. I built onshore wind. My brother's in that business. Onshore wind is very efficient and very, very effective, and we have the best onshore wind in the world here in the United States. Onshore wind can provide wind power at about 11 cents a kilowatt hour. Offshore wind, 33 cents a kilowatt hour. The average price of energy in this country is about 14 to 16 cents a kilowatt hour. Onshore wind is more than double that. Offshore wind. So no utility in the world would ever build one of these towers unless it wasn't funded billions of dollars in federal subsidies and tax breaks. The foreign companies, because they're foreign, they cannot take advantage of U.S. tax breaks. So they get the big financial houses from our country to finance them so they can take those tax breaks. So the big players are BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Morgan, Citibank, Wells Fargo, all the big contributors to the Democratic Party. And they've gotten the tax breaks from the Inflation Reduction Act, which was Joe Biden's signature environmental accomplishment. But it's not actually protecting the environment. It's all about subsidies, these giant boondoggles for huge players that are destroying the environment. The other big, $79 billion of subsidies are going to carbon capture, which is tearing up the Midwest farmland. Oh, this is a boondoggle to big oil companies, to big methane companies, to big ag, to take the carbon from methane plants and then inject it into deep wells, oil wells in the Bakken Shale and in southern Illinois to bring out the last drops of oil. So instead of reducing carbon, they're actually increasing carbon in the environment. It's just this extraordinary, and it's $79 billion in subsidies to do something that is an absolute boondoggle, and there's no other way to describe it. I'll tell you one other thing. There's one of the byproducts of carbon capture is sulfuric acid, which the Woods Hole Marine Institute now has a contract to dump 2 million metric tons of this material, which it destroys any form of life. It actually destroys your genes and destroys it at the cellular level. To dump it into the ocean off in Nantucket. And you know, it's part of this process, and they're all going along with it because they've all been paid off. And it really is it's sickening, it's criminal. And it's, you know, and that is somehow, as I said, there's been this huge inversion where the Republicans are opposing that. Republicans are focused on protecting the environment, protecting habitat, protecting our children from these toxic chemicals. And the Democratic Party and the associated environmental groups have forgotten about that mission.